If you didn't know, closed eyes during the day is usually a health concern for chameleons. There's a few different reasons why a chameleon would be closing their eyes. One is because they're sleeping. This is normal, this is expected, as long as it's nighttime. The issue is when this happens during the daytime. At nighttime, all lights should be off. Your chameleon gets in a little sleeping spot, maybe an hour or two before lights turn off, and then it'll close its eyes, go to sleep, good to go. If your chameleon is closing their eyes just like maybe an hour or so, give or take, before lights turn off, or an hour or so after lights turn on, like, this is not cause for concern. It's just them, waking up, going to sleep, part of their night and morning routine. What is concerning is if this is happening during the daytime when their lights are on, like all the way on. So it's usually caused by two things. First one is stress. If you bring a chameleon home for the first time, it's going to be a new environment, lots of change, and that could cause stress for your chameleon. So if that's the case, then this is kind of normal-ish behavior. I would give it like a week or so and see if your chameleon gets acclimated to their new environment, and then they'll hopefully open their eyes, be more alert, active, and be good to go. If your chameleon is still doing it or stressed, then we need to take a look at their enclosure. And if they don't have anywhere to hide, then that's going to cause them to feel stressed and get scared and defensive and things like that. So if that's the case, then we need to put in lots of branches and lots of plants inside the enclosure. The golden rule is that if it's easy to spot your chameleon within the enclosure, then there's probably not enough plant coverage. We want to make sure that if we look into the enclosure, we have to like search, really try to find our chameleon, but oh, there it is back in the corner, but you had to like look for 30 seconds, before you found them. Another sign of stress and closed eyes all going together, tying into each other, is if you're handling your chameleon. Now, a lot of people misinterpret this behavior as it being super cute and their chameleon falling asleep on them and snuggling them because they're holding them and then the chameleon is going to sleep. The reality is the chameleon is so stressed out that its body is starting to shut down. This is like worst case scenario when it comes to closed eyes from stress. And the worst part is it's because of you. You're this big scary creature and this is tiny little chameleon, and it's just terrified that you're going to eat them. They don't know that you love them and feed them and care for them. They think you're this big old predator, so their body's starting to shut down and they just close their eyes and go phew, and power off. So this is an absolute sign of stress. It's totally preventable, and the solution is you just don't handle your chameleon. And be sure you're not handling your chameleon too close to when the lights go off. And if you do handle your chameleon, that you just take them out and then you put them onto a free range or a plant or something. There's no real need for a chameleon to be climbing all over you and to be on you. Chameleons are solitary creatures. They're more of a look at pet. I always say it's like a pet fish where we just look at them and enjoy them and just appreciate them for what they are. They're not a pet that you're gonna be handling all the time and snuggling, and if they're closing their eyes, like, this is a very, very, very bad sign. Okay, so if it's not from stress, which is usually pretty easy to correct, right? We just change their environment and hopefully that'll be good. Then it's most likely because of sickness. And when I say sickness, there's usually two reasons in my experience and from my observations that are causing a chameleon to have one eye closed or two eyes closed. And one of those reasons being UVB. So if you didn't know, UVB is the light that chameleons need. They have their heat bulb and their UVB bulb. And UVB, not to get into the nitty-gritties of all of it, has to do with vitamin D3 and calcium synthesis and the way the body absorbs that. I have a whole video on UVB if you want to get into like the science and nitty-gritties of all of it. But the gist of it is, if you have the incorrect UVB bulb, that can result in eye issues. So what I commonly see is people using compact UVB bulbs, which are going to be the smaller ones that come in the square box, and they're going to be kind of squiggly bulbs. Compact UVBs don't penetrate deep enough into the enclosure for the chameleon to properly absorb the UVB. I have definitely seen chameleons who were underneath a compact UVB, have their eyes closed, develop some eye issues. I advise that they correct their UVB and then the eye issues were resolved. I've also seen, so that's if you have not enough UVB, but I've also seen it on the other end where people have given their chameleon too much UVB. So let's talk about what bulb that you actually do need. If you have a 48-inch tall enclosure, which is the recommended size for a Chameleon, then you want to be using a T5 high output linear UVB, either the ReptiSun 5.0 or the Arcadia 6%. So that's the bulb you need for a 48-inch tall enclosure. Now, if you're currently using a smaller enclosure, then you need to raise that UVB bulb up so that it is 48 inches from the bottom. A lot of people do this by putting like plastic cups or something on either side of the bulb because their intentions are usually to get a larger enclosure eventually. So this is kind of an intermediate solution while you're working towards getting a larger enclosure. So that's what you actually need. What I also will see is people using a ReptiSun 10.0 or an Arcadia 12%. Now we're constantly learning more about UVB, but with the current recommendations in Chameleon care best practices, a 10.0 and a 12% is actually providing too much UVB for a Chameleon enclosure that is 48 inches tall. And I know lots of people have different opinions on what UVB bulb is recommended, and Veiled should have this and Panther should have this, but unless you have a solar meter, which is a device that you can use to measure the UVI output, we kind of have to rely on the guidance of measurements that have already been conducted. So I will link an excellent resource from a Chameleon Academy down below that actually has a UVI chart that graphs what a 5.0 and a 10.0, a 6%, a 12%, all the different UVB ranges. And you can see for yourself how much UVB is being put out by those 10.0 and 12%. And once you look at that, it's pretty obvious that we don't need to be giving our Chameleons that much UVB. So the gist of it is, correct your UVB bulb, make sure it is appropriate for your enclosure size, and that may or may not resolve the eye issues. Another thing that I see when it comes to care and Chameleon eyes and them being shut is incorrect supplements. So supplements are the powder that we put on top of our bugs to help fill in some gaps that they would naturally have in the wild, but because of captivity and artificial UVB and the types of bugs that we feed our Chameleons, which are higher in phosphorus than in calcium, we need to provide calcium supplements and multivitamins to our Chameleons' diet to help supplement, hence the name, their diet and their nutrition. What I commonly see is people using calcium with vitamin D3. If you didn't know, there's two types. Calcium without vitamin D3, which is literally just pure calcium, and then calcium with vitamin D3. Now, it is possible to give your Chameleon too much vitamin D3, and this is a very common mistake that I see people make because they don't realize there's a difference. So you want to be primarily using the calcium without vitamin D3, and if you have a Veiled or a Panther, then you should just be using that pretty much every feeding, and then twice a month you would use the calcium with vitamin D3. Now if you have a Jackson's Chameleon, then you really only need to use it like once a month, so they have a slightly different supplement schedule. So that's what we do with our calcium. Then there's this third thing called a multivitamin, and the multivitamin provides things like vitamin A along with other vitamins that are essential to our Chameleon's health. If you didn't know, vitamin A is attributed to eye health. So we want to make sure that we are also providing our Chameleon with a multivitamin. Now, I recommend, or I use myself, Reptivite without vitamin D3. And if that's the one you choose to use, great, then you would use that one twice a month for a Veiled or Panther, and then once a month for a Jackson's Chameleon. Now, if your Reptivite or your multivitamin that you choose to use, there's lots of them out there, already has D3 in it, then you can just use the calcium without vitamin D3 every feeding, and then twice a month just use that multivitamin that has D3 in it. And when I say use those supplements, I mean every single bug, every single feeding should have a supplement on it. The people that I see whose Chameleons are having eye issues, they don't have a strict schedule. I'm like, what's your supplements? What are you using? How often? They're like, oh, I just use this one and then that one sometimes, and maybe I use that. No. This is your Chameleon, this is their health. We have to be on top of our care and our husbandry, so you need to have a structured supplement schedule. I have a whole video that goes into the details of supplements, and I'll link that up above here and in the description box below. But the gist of it is, make sure you're using primarily calcium without vitamin D3, and you have a multivitamin mixed into your diet as well. Another sickness that could be resulting in a chameleon closing their eyes is an upper respiratory infection. Now this is usually paired with gaping, the chameleon's head being tilted, and I kind of talked about this in my video of why is my chameleon's mouth open in a little bit more detail, but upper respiratory infections typically require vet treatment, so that would be my recommendation, and that's, like I said, paired with a couple of other symptoms, so I would look into that. I do plan on making a video all about upper respiratory infections, but I haven't made it yet, so stay tuned. Another reason that a chameleon may be closing its eyes would be from some sort of injury. This could be from a scratch from another animal, it could be from a pokey zip tie, it could be from a pokey branch or wire or something that's sticking out and they kind of like got in their eye. You would probably mostly see if it was just one eye that was closed, but that could be a reason why. Another thing is they could have something stuck in their eye, such as a piece of shed or a bug leg. You think that's kind of weird, don't you? But I've seen like my chameleons chomp on some bugs and like parts go fine, so I've definitely seen Neptune get hornworm guts in his eye before. He was fine, but like that definitely happened, but I could see maybe that causing a chameleon's eye to be closed because there's like something stuck in there. If that's the case, I would take them to the vet if it doesn't resolve itself within a day or two, and then maybe just offer them a heavy misting to see if they can kind of flush it out themselves. But if it's an injury or something stuck in there, if it's swelling of any sort, then I would take them to a reptile vet. And then the last kind of sickness, health reason I can think of why chameleons' eyes would be closed is if they're on death's door. And it breaks my heart, but I've seen this more times than I can count. The chameleon is stuck at the bottom of the enclosure, the metabolic bone disease, the upper respiratory infection, like whatever underlying health condition is happening, they are now on death's door and maybe have hours left to live. They're hanging out the bottom, they're unable to climb, their eyes are closed, like their colors are off, their eyes are sunken in, like this is absolutely worst case scenario, and the only possible way to save this chameleon is with an emergency reptile vet. There's not much you can do if they're at that point and that extreme, and it's typically the result of other underlying health issues by the time it gets to that point. And now this video is all about chameleon's eyes being closed, but there are other eye injuries and health issues. So if there's any sort of like pus or crust or swelling or anything like that, then I would recommend taking them to a reptile vet. The closed eyes is usually from stress or improper care, so we can typically fix those and then the issue will resolve itself. So there you go. That's kind of some different reasons why your chameleon's eyes may be closed. It could be just one, it could be both of them, But the thing is, you kind of have to use all these environmental and situational factors to kind of troubleshoot why it is. I can't give you a cookie cutter answer of because of this, that means this. I can't see your chameleon, I don't know how long you've had them, I don't know what their care is, so what I'm trying to do is provide you guys the knowledge so then you can look at your setup and your environment and your chameleon's health and see if there's something that's incorrect with it that you can change to help improve the issue. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave any questions or comments down below. Feel free to subscribe so you know when I post a new video. And you can follow Neptune and all my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye! Let's check if you're still recording. Yep, okay. We're still going. Alright, still have the hiccups. There it is.